Today I will be going over a brand new poll by Fox News and a few very key Rust Belt states that confirm what as the trends have been showing for the last few days, which as the Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris race has gotten a lot closer and even closer than what Trump versus Biden ended up being. So, Fox News did a poll a few days ago, the time this video is coming out. I'm recording this on Saturday, so just when the poll comes out. And in this poll, it shows a bunch of Rust Belt states being polled. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Minnesota. So it's a poll conducted in the Rust Belt by Fox News. And as you can see on your screen here, it shows Trump is up by 1 point in Wisconsin, 50-49. Trump and Harris are tied in Michigan, 49-49. Pennsylvania, Trump and Harris are tied 49-49. And in Minnesota, Harris is leading Trump by 6 points, 52-46. And I'm going to go to each state individually in a second, but before I do that, I'm just going to show you they also did a part of the poll, a part where they do more than just Trump and Harris. They also throw in RFK Jr., Jill Stein, and Cornel West. And in Wisconsin, this ends in a tie, 46-46. Michigan, Trump versus Harris. Trump leads Harris by 2, 45-43, with Kennedy getting about 7% of the vote here. In Pennsylvania, Harris actually takes the lead, where she is 45-43 over Trump, Kennedy at 7. And in Minnesota, Harris continues to lead here by 6 points, 47-41, Harris over Trump. So, first state I'm going to go to is Wisconsin. This is a state that in the last few election cycles, really since 2016, has been very, very close, and has been decided by either 1 point or under, or maybe slightly over 1 percentage point. It's a state that's definitely going to be very close come November. It's going to be one of the most important states for both Trump and Harris's pathway to victory, and definitely one to keep an eye on. And it's not just the presidential election, but we've seen, for instance, in the governor's race in 2022, and the Ron Johnson Senate race, I believe also in 2022, Wisconsin needs to have very close elections. It is never a blowout for one party or the other now, it seems. It's almost always a very close election. And since Harris has joined the race, where it's now going to be Trump versus Harris, in all likelihood, the polls in Wisconsin show it. It's a 1 point race. And it's a conversation that I think many Republicans either don't want to have or don't want to admit. But Harris being in this race has changed things. It's not a Trump versus Biden race anymore, where Trump was up by 3 to 5 points over Biden. Now it's a 1 point race again. It's very, very close. And like I've said in some past videos, it has nothing to do with Trump losing support. Trump has not lost support since Harris has joined the race. But Harris has been able to gain back a lot of the Democratic support that maybe wasn't comfortable voting for Biden or wasn't comfortable saying they were, because they had problems with how Biden's age concerns or fitness to be president concerns. Those supporters have all seemed to come roaring back to Harris, where now, even though in this poll she's losing by 1 point, she's made it a very close competitive race and is within the margin of error of 3%. So you could say, if you factor in the margin of error, this is a tied race. And the other two states suggest that as well. Now, Wisconsin is 10 electoral votes. The polling history of Wisconsin has been a little streaky. So, as we could see back in 2020, Biden won the polling by 6.4 points. He did not come close to winning the state by that much. He won it by a little over 1% on Election Day. In 2016, Hillary Clinton was leading by 5.6 points, and Trump ended up winning the state. So the polling in Wisconsin isn't always super accurate, and it's definitely one to kind of be cautious of. But the only thing that is skeptical, I think, is good for Trump that he's winning here, but that doesn't mean automatically Trump will win here by 5 points, because they overestimated the Democrats in 2020 and 2016. It doesn't necessarily say that absolute mentality could be true, could not be true. We really won't know until Election Day, but at very least on face value, we have to accept Wisconsin for what it is, and that is a very close state that on Election Day is going to come down to the wire. And Trump versus Harris, this race has gotten very close, and I expect it probably to stay this way. After the DNC convention, it'll be interesting to see if Harris's support goes up, stays the same, maybe decreases a little bit. But until then, it makes sense that Harris's support will continue to either stay the same or rise a little bit. But however, even though the race is essentially tied, it's not all doom and gloom for Trump, who, like I mentioned, has not gone down in support and is actually still leading in this poll. There's 4 polls conducted in this average of Wisconsin. Trump's leading 3 out of the 4. It's only by 1 point, but whether you win by 1 point or 50 points in the presidential election system, it doesn't matter. If you win, you win, and you get all 10 of the electoral votes. So Trump winning in the poll is at very least a good sign for him. What's not a good sign is how close it's gotten. Michigan is not really any different. The average still has Trump up by 1 point. In the Fox News poll, it's a tie, 49-49. Michigan has historically been talked about as the most Democratic of the 3 Rust Belt states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. So the fact that Trump and Harris are tied here, it really should not be much of a surprise. But if the Fox News poll is correct, which, it has a varying history of sometimes being correct, sometimes not, so it's hard to really know what the Fox News poll will end up looking like to the actual result. Look, the fact that Trump has 49% is good, because I believe that would be higher than what he got in 2016 and 2020. In 2016, he got about 47% in the state. In 2020, I believe he got about 48%. So if Trump is at 49%, that would actually be a high in his Michigan state performance. So that's very good for Trump. But again, the bad news is Harris, when Trump versus Harris was before, 46-45, 48-46, Harris has been able to consolidate a lot of that Democratic support and independent support that probably would have voted for Biden, but wasn't very enthusiastic about doing so. Harris, since entering the race, has been able to win a lot of those supporters back, which is why I think we're seeing a tied race here in Michigan. But nonetheless, 49-49, very close. I think the biggest takeaway from this poll, and from all the polls that Fox News have done, is it's really a close race. It's going to come down to the wire. I'm sure Republicans don't want to admit that and want to say Trump will win in a blowout. I'm also sure Democrats will want to say that, no, it's not a close race. Kamala Harris will defeat Trump in a blowout. The fact is, until things change, it's going to be a very close race that'll come down to the wire. And I think that's something both sides kind of have to be prepared for. This might be an election where literally get out the vote efforts and every vote may literally count. And it seems Michigan is going to be one of those states. Pennsylvania is, in the poll, 49-49, a tie between Trump and Harris, similar to Michigan. However, the polling average has shown that Trump is leading Harris by a bigger margin. But since Biden dropped out of the race, the 3 polls that have been conducted had Trump up 2, and a tie. So the trend has been that the race is getting closer. But again, look at the percentages. I've been trying to say this for a few videos now. 47-48 for Trump, 45-46 for Harris. That's good, but there's still a lot of undecided vote left. In the Fox News poll, there's not much. It's 49-49. That adds up to 98, and next thing you know, there's 2% undecided vote left. That'll decide who wins the state and who doesn't. So it's really a conversation of, does the Fox News poll end up being accurate? Because if it does, literally one vote may decide the difference in Pennsylvania. Trump versus Harris is very, very close. And I believe there was a statement the Harris campaign put out yesterday saying that Harris does not support banning fracking. And that was intentional. She did that because there's a clip of her in 2020 saying she did. And she also knows if she holds that position, she's probably not going to win Pennsylvania. So she's trying to position herself and her campaign to be in the best situation to go after the state like Pennsylvania and cut off a crucial state to Trump's pathway to victory. But Trump's still leading in the RCP average by 3 points, but the trend is shown it is getting closer. Still, I think you'd rather be Trump for right now when it comes to winning Pennsylvania due to the fact that he does have a few poll track record of winning here. But it being a tie in the Fox News poll shows Harris is definitely starting to consolidate a lot of the support which Biden lost. In Minnesota, there's only 2 polls here factored into the average, and this is going to go pretty quick actually. The Fox News poll has Harris defeating Trump in the state by 6 points, 52-46. This would be more in line with what we saw from 2020 of Trump versus Biden versus 2016 of Clinton versus Trump. In Minnesota, there was talk about Republicans trying to contest the state and make it really close. And I'm sure it's a state Trump would love to win. But at the end of the day, you really have to just consider the fact that Trump can win the election without winning Minnesota. And seeing as Harris in both this poll and the KSTP Survey USA poll has Harris at 50% or better, I think it's pretty safe to assume that Harris is probably winning Minnesota. probably in the 6% margin is what it's going to end up being, and that the Trump campaign is probably going to have to focus on the other 3 Rust Belt states I previously talked about. Minnesota, when I go to the electoral map, is going to go probably to my likely Democratic column, and she was able to consolidate a lot of that support that Biden lost, just like a lot of the other states and national polling. And before I go to the approval ratings, I just want to show what I mean by this. This black line indicates when Biden dropped out of the race. Trump was leading here by 3.1% over Biden. The second Harris joined the race, Harris remained pretty consistent but started going up by a few percentage points. Biden was at 44.8. Harris joined at 45.9. So Harris went up 1.1% from Biden in the first poll. Trump, this is why I keep saying this point, Trump's support has not gone down. He was at 47.9 when Biden dropped out. The first poll had him at 47.5, 0.4% lower, but now it's kind of evened out where Trump's back to where he was at 47.9. Trump's supporters remain consistent. Trump's support is doing just as well as he did as when Biden was in the race. The only difference is a lot of the independent and Democratic voters who were going to support Biden but didn't like the job he was doing, at least 1.1% of them have now come back to Kamala Harris. That's why I think we're seeing a lot of the polls getting closer. It's not Kamala Harris necessarily winning these races. It's just she shrunk the margin of victory that Trump was having. So instead of Trump winning by 3 or 4 points, now Trump is winning by 1 point or tied. And I think we'll probably see this continue at very least through the DNC convention. And then after that, we'll have to wait and see as the election gets into the final months and final weeks. And really quickly, just going over the favorability of both Harris and Trump, I noticed something very interesting. Harris and Trump's approval ratings are both actually getting better. They're getting more popular. Harris was sitting at about 38% or so. She started to go up a bit, but 38, 39% approval, 54% disapproval. Until really Biden dropped out of the race and she became like the presumptive Democratic nominee, her favorability ratings have actually started to go up. Now, it'll be interesting to see how this continues after the DNC convention, and I'm sure once the Trump campaign's attack ads against her start coming out more frequently, it'll be interesting to see how these numbers change. Does she get more popular? Does she get less popular? Does maybe more of her record, as from one of the times she was a senator or attorney general, start to change things? We'll have to wait and see, but at least right now, her favorability ratings are getting better. It's a 9.5% disapproval rating for her, though, still not good, but the trend is she's getting more approved of. But Trump actually is too. It's not as much as Harris's, but as you can see, Trump's approval rating was sitting about 42, 48, or 42.8, 42.5. Now it's actually at about 44.1, which is negative 8.4 points. So this is a weird case that we have not seen of a Trump election, really, is that Trump and the Democratic candidate, was Biden, now Harris, are both getting more popular the closer we get to the election. So it's very interesting thing that I noticed there. I just want to point out. So with that, now we go to the electoral map, where for a few weeks now I've had it at 235 for Trump Vance and 226 starting out for Harris and whoever she chooses to be her vice president. I'll be doing a video in the coming days about that as well, so definitely stay tuned for that one. In the past, I had New Hampshire in my last video as lean Harris. I now flip that to likely Harris. Minnesota for now, 6 points. I'm going to be flipping Minnesota to likely Harris as well. It's just more likely that I think she wins the state, probably by around that 6% margin, which would be enough to be likely because it'll be over 5. Harris is at 226. Trump Vance, 235. All the polls today I talked about, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, as I've done a bunch of times now, they are absolutely crucial for Harris and Trump's pathway to victory. Trump, though, really only needs to win one of them in combination of winning some other toss-up states. If Trump can win Pennsylvania, which he won in the poll, or no, he was tied in the poll, I believe, excuse me. Let me get this right. I want to make sure I'm right here. Yes, they were tied in the poll, but Trump was leading the national average of Pennsylvania. If Trump wins Pennsylvania, well, he can win this election by winning Georgia. That would be enough to give Trump the election. However, let's not factor Georgia into it. Let's just go purely the Rust Belt. If Pennsylvania goes to Harris, well, it's 245, 235. Harris now takes the lead, but it's not game over for Trump. Trump can still win by winning Michigan. That gets him to 250. But the point I'm making here is for Trump to win, it's probably not likely, unless Trump sweeps the 3 Rust Belt states again like he did in 2016, Trump can't win the election without winning Georgia and maybe Arizona and Nevada. He would need to win all 3 of the Rust Belt states to do that. And we'll see if he's able to do it. The polls in Michigan have not been great for Trump so much in the last few days. He's still tied or leading there, but it's definitely getting closer. And it's probably a lot to ask, but without winning the other states, Trump can win. But if Harris were to win one of the Rust Belt states, even Wisconsin, that pathway goes away for Trump now, without winning the other states. If Trump can win Georgia or Arizona, this conversation is really mute and doesn't really matter. But the point I'm making here is if Harris can win all 3 of the Rust Belt states, this is why it's very important. That gets her to 270 electoral votes exactly, in combination of winning the likely states of Minnesota, New Hampshire, lean state of Virginia for right now, and Nebraska's 2nd Congressional District, along with all the other safe Democratic states. That gets Kamala Harris 270 electoral votes exactly, which would just be enough for her to win the election. So it's very likely, more likely than not, that Trump can still win this election, but he needs to win one of the 3 Rust Belt states. If Trump doesn't win one of the 3 Rust Belt states, I'm having a hard time right now seeing a pathway to victory for him. But for Trump, though, on the opposite, if he wins one of the Rust Belt states, say he wins Wisconsin, that technically is a blow to Harris's path. Because Harris still might win the election, but it gives Trump a chance to win. Harris could, for instance, win the state of Arizona, and that would make up for her losing Wisconsin, and then she would still win. But at very least, Trump winning one of the Rust Belt states gives a sign that Trump is in play at still winning the election. If Trump loses Wisconsin and loses Michigan and Pennsylvania as well, that pretty much means there is no path for Trump winning the election. And then once that happens, if these 3 states go blue, well then the election's pretty much over. If Trump is able to win one of them, well then we have to start going through Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada and kind of find out, okay, how are things developing out there? It's a very, very interesting development in the election, that things are definitely getting closer. I'm sure there'll be a bunch of articles and such coming in the next few days about why this election's gotten close, but the simple fact is, and I'm sure both sides probably don't want to admit this, but this is going to be a very close election. At least right now, it's all the polls have suggested it's gotten a lot closer. Harris has been able to rejuvenize a lot of the Democratic support and independent support that Biden had lost. She's been able to get a lot of that back. And now instead of Trump leading by 4 or 5 points, he's leading by 1 point or the race is tied. So it's going to be a very close race that'll come down to the wire, and it'll definitely be something interesting to watch. It's a very, very important discussion and definitely one to keep an eye on. So that'll do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like the video and subscribe to my channel so you get notified when I make videos like this more and more leading up to Election Day. Thank you so much for watching and hope to see you in a future video.